Today we're going to continue our study of Chapter 6 on China with Lesson 2. We're going to go back and do a quick review of Lesson 1 since we did that before Christmas, just to engage our brains again. So if you'll remember, we have two rivers where the Shang Dynasty was formed along the Huanghe and the Shangjiang. And to make it even a little harder to remember, both of those rivers have other names. The Huanghe River is also called the Yellow River and China's Sorrow because of the destructive flooding. And the Shangjiang is also known as the Yangtze or the Yangtze River, and it's the longest river in Asia. Now, we know that it is officially accepted that the Shang Dynasty was the first dynasty that we know of in China. However, there is kind of like a folk tale about the Xia Dynasty that may have been founded around 2200 BC by Yu the Great. But there's no firm evidence that supports that, so we mention the Xia Dynasty, but since there's no evidence, we say that the Shang Dynasty was the first official dynasty. All right, we also talked about the writing system in China, and we looked at that and how it has evolved over the ages. Kind of started out as similar to pictographs, and then as you can see, it evolved into a more complex writing system. So today we are going to deal with the next dynasty, which is the Zhou Dynasty, and new ideas. So this is lesson 6.2. Our big idea for today's lesson is Confucius and other philosophers taught ways to deal with social and political problems in ancient Asia, or ancient China. There are three main ideas. The Zhou Dynasty expanded China, but then it declined. Confucius offered ideas to bring order to Chinese society. And Taoism and legalism gained followers during this time period. So this is pronounced Zhou in English, Z-H-O-U, Zhou. And the Zhou people worked with other tribes to overthrow the Shang Dynasty around about 1100s BC or BCE. The Zhou leaders believed that their rulers were mandated by heaven, not God, but heaven, and that heaven would find another leader when it was time for that to happen. So we have a new political order that was established here. You have the king at the top. He granted plots of land to the lords, who in turn provided soldiers, and they paid taxes to the king. Then the poor farmers, they were also granted land as well, and they remained under the rule of the lords. So basically, the lords helped the Zhou rulers keep control of the dynasty. You're going to come back and watch this video. And here you see the Zhou Dynasty from around 1050 BC to about 400 BC or BCE. All of this in purple. So again, king at the top, led the government, gave land to the lords. You've got the lords and the warriors in the middle. The lords paid taxes to the king, provided warriors to protect the lands, and then the peasants at the bottom, they farmed the nobles' lands. So eventually, the lords in the middle, well, they kind of got tired of being in the middle. They wanted to have more power. So as their power grew, They just simply became uninterested in serving the Zhou rulers. Many of them even refused to fight against Zhou enemies. So in 771 BCE, the Zhou suffered a loss to invaders. Now the dynasty survived, but with this weakened morale, they began to bicker amongst themselves. So you've got the Zhou people that are fighting amongst themselves here. This is known as the Warring States period. So they're not fighting anybody else, they're fighting each other. And this Warring States period marked power struggles between the ruling class families in China. So the problems within the government paralleled problems within the large family systems, which both were breaking down, and the bonds of loyalty weakened even within the small families, which caused total disorder to fall upon China. And this is just a depiction of what was going on during the Warring States period. And you'll notice that they're now fighting with iron weapons, which made warfare more dangerous and definitely bloodier. And instead of just using the horses to pull the chariots, they're now fighting on horseback. So this gave an entrance to a person you've probably heard of, Confucius. And you could kind of look at it like a religion, although it is not a religion, but it's called Confucianism, and it's just a set of beliefs. He had certain moral values. So basically, he was tired of all the bickering and fighting. He was disgusted with the rude and insensitive nature of the people around him. So he was pushing for a return to ethics, which are moral values. He wrote down this code of ethics in a book called the Analects, and these stories focused on morality, family, society, and government. So basically, how to get along. His motto was to lead by example. So one of the major ideas that he put forth for success of both the family and the government was leading by example. Confucius believed that when people behaved well and they acted morally, they were carrying out what heaven expected of them. Remember the mandate of heaven. That's how they got their next leader. So the main idea is people should be respectful and loyal to their family members. Leaders should be kind and lead by example. Learning is a process that never ends, and heaven expects people to behave well and act morally. Those are the main ideas of Confucianism, named for Confucius. You're going to come back and watch this video on the 5 relationships according to Confucius. And then you're going to watch this video on Confucianism as well. There are 2 schools of thought that developed out of not only Confucianism, but this whole Warring States period during the Zhou Dynasty. We have Taoism and legalism. Taoism comes from the word Dao, D-A-O, and it simply means the way. So Taoists believe that people should avoid interfering with nature or with each other. In other words, don't put your nose in somebody else's business. Lao Tzu was a Taoist. He wrote The Way and Its Power, which is a book that teaches that power and wealth are unnecessary. And then on the other side, total opposite side of Taoism, we have legalism. Legalism is the political philosophy, basically that people are too stupid to think for themselves and that they need to be controlled. So legalism is unconcerned with religion or what you think as an individual, and the legalists are always prepared for war. We will dig a little bit deeper into legalism in our next lesson. But for now, this is the end of lesson 6.2. And next week, we will learn about the Qin Dynasty.